Physical control in Seattle or Washington State. What is that? Are you charged with physical control? Do you know somebody who is? Are you just interested in physical control? Well, that's actually a statute here in Washington State that's like a DUI, and this video is to talk about that. My name is Lance Fryrear. I'm the owner of the law offices of Lance Fryrear. We've been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State, including physical control, for more than 20 years. And I put these videos together to help educate people at all hours of the night. You're probably watching this on YouTube. Maybe not be a good time to call a lawyer. So if you find this useful, please like the video. Please follow our channel. It'll help it get out to more people. So what am I going to cover in this video about physical control? 1, how is it defined? What is it? You might not even have heard of it before. 2, what are some common situations to avoid to not put yourself in a situation where you can accidentally have done something wrong and get charged with physical control? And number 3, and most importantly, so please wait until the end for this, watch until the end, is what are the best defenses for a physical control charge? So again, number 1, what is physical control? Basically, think about it as a DUI without driving. Physical control is defined in the statute as being in actual physical control of a motor vehicle while under the influence. And under the influence means of alcohol or drugs. It's the same standards as DUI. 0.08 means you're automatically guilty. For alcohol, 5 nanograms or more of marijuana, or your ability to drive would be affected by alcohol or drugs. And isn't that strange? Because physical control doesn't require driving. You didn't hear me mention driving in the definition. So what are the penalties for physical control? The same as a DUI. Mandatory jail time, mandatory license suspension, mandatory ignition interlock, even though you never started your car or you weren't driving it. And so the penalties don't make a lot of sense to people, but basically the legislature said, we want to criminalize somebody getting into their car drunk if they're the only one who could make it drive. Okay, they've also created an interesting defense, which we'll talk about in number 3. Again, wait until the end to hear about the defenses. But that is how physical control is defined. Basically, having the ability to make your car move while you're in it drunk. So what are some common situations to avoid to not get charged with this crime? Or where do we see it charged when people didn't really expect to be charged? Well, the most common situation is you're at a party, you think you're too drunk to drive, you don't want to stay over and bother your friends, so you think, I'm just going to go sleep it off in the car. You sleep it off in the car, a neighbor notices something, they call the police. Next thing you know, knock, 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 police are on the window. There the keys are in the car. You're drunk, you wake up. Well, you're in physical control. Even though the cars weren't in the ignition, the keys weren't in the ignition, even though you weren't driving, the officer is going to arrest you for being in actual physical control of a motor vehicle while being under the influence. And that's really not a fun thing to go through. Another situation that we see is someone might actually be driving and then they, pass out. They turn their car off and park someplace they're not allowed to park. They have a minor fender bender and they just leave the car there in it and, fall asleep. Well, that could be physical control because if the officer doesn't see you drive or doesn't have proof of driving, they might have to charge physical control. Another situation I've actually seen, which is really terrible, is let's say you're with your partner and maybe you're at a bar or a casino and your partner wants to drive. You think they're too drunk to drive. And so they get in the passenger seat or the driver's seat, your partner does. They do want to drive away and you don't want them to. Well, let's say you see an officer and flag that officer over. The officer stops. Please, officer, don't have my partner drive. The officer talks to your partner, understands they're drunk. If they're in the car and they have the keys, I've seen someone get arrested for physical control in that situation because someone was trying to get them to not drive and they didn't drive, but yet they still got arrested because they were in the car with the keys. So bottom line is the way you have to think about it is if I am getting into a motor vehicle under the influence, and I'm the only person in there, there's no one else to drive it. I better not have access to be able to make it run. In other words, I better not have keys in the car, have keys on me. They better be inside. Maybe you throw them underneath the car to be safe. You could still get in trouble depending on how an officer looks at it. So just be careful. Do not get into a motor vehicle and think you're going to sleep it off and be okay. Because if the police come upon you, you can pretty much bet they're going to charge you with something the same as a DUI. It doesn't seem fair, but that's what they do. The legislature really does not even want to tempt us to get near a car while we're under the influence. And so I know I've been talking a long time, but number 3, what are defenses to physical control? Well, the most important one is called safely off the roadway. So while the legislature has said, hey, we don't want you to get into a car drunk, if you happen to be driving after drinking and now you think, hey, I'm too intoxicated to drive, the legislature wants to encourage you to pull over and give you a defense. So basically, you're driving, I think I've had too much to drink. I'm going to pull over now in this parking lot and park, and now I'm going to sleep it off. Well, or I'm just going to rest a while. Well, there's a defense for a physical control charge. So let's say the officer comes upon you and sees you in the car and charges you with physical control. They didn't see you drive, but you're in the car with the keys drunk. Well, there's a defense that says prior to being pursued by a police officer, if you pull your car, the legal term is safely off the roadway, then that's a defense, because we want to encourage people who are driving after too much to drink to stop. And we want to give them a way out to not get charged with the crime, to not have to make it all the way home. So in that type of situation, we look at where were you parked? Were you parked legally? Was the car turned off? Was it in a safe situation? Was the car safely off the roadway? That's something we have to prove at a trial, but it's a very good defense to a physical control charge. Secondly, are just common DUI defenses. Hey, I wasn't drunk. I might have consumed alcohol, but I wasn't a .08. Or I did well on field sobriety tests, so I wasn't drunk. Basically, I wasn't under the influence. Or if I was under the influence, I was barely under the influence. I wasn't even driving. Okay, so, cut me some slack. And then number 3 is typical defense strategies in defending people charged with DUI. Hey, we're going to have you get an alcohol and drug evaluation. We're going to show that you hopefully don't have a problem with alcohol and drugs. We're going to have you do a class, a victims panel. We're going to find the legal problems with the case, and we're going to try to protect your license. And finally, if you have a pretty bad record or you've been through a DUI in the past, you could consider deferred prosecution. That's doing 2 years of alcohol or drug treatment, stand in trouble for 5 years, and making the whole charge get dismissed. So those are the most common ways to defend a physical control charge, at least that might work. Again, if you find this video helpful, please like it. Please follow our channel. We put out videos all the time. And if you are charged with this type of crime or you know somebody who is, just give our office a call. Again, we've been defending people charged with this type of thing for more than 20 years. I was a prosecutor 7 years before that, so I know both sides. And no matter your situation, we'll listen to what you have to say. We'll hear your side of the story. We'll help you figure out what to do next. And most importantly, we'll be there for you. Thank you.